Nancy.
Hey, Nancy, go right ahead.
Good morning. Yeah, the reason why I'm on so early is because half the time I have trouble getting into the internet and getting to be on this Zoom meeting. So, but anyways, I'm noticing that a lot of the Veronicas that have been planted for a few years are just totally dwindling. I've seen it at my house and a couple other houses, and they were nice and full in like May, and now they're just all like they're almost dead. Do you have any thoughts on that?
They there is a problem where we've got some other examples of called melting out that can happen when a fungus gets in the crown of an old, especially of an older plant, but there's some species that are prone to it. And what will happen is toward the middle of summer, the crown being weak, is it'll give up and let all the stems attached to it die back. It can also happen when you get a lot of mildew, and some of the Veronicas, some of them are very susceptible to mildew. So,
and it's been a so-so mildew year up until recently, and now I think it's starting to get heavy.
Well, it's showing up in some gardens for sure. So,
Yeah.
did any of these Veronicas show any indications of mildew where they got brown lower leaves or gray lower leaves earlier in their lives in previous years?
Not that I remember, no.
Yeah, that's what I would suspect. And even if I didn't, even when I don't know what's wrong, I know I can dig it up and divide it and take just the lively outer pieces, and they grow even faster that way. So they may be wearing out and fell prey to a problem that they haven't had in previous years, but that their species is prone to, which is the mildew.
Yeah,
At one house that I just saw yesterday, the whole middle of the plant looks gone, and it's just
And
there
that's
on the
yeah,
edges.
and that's typical of something that's folding because it's been repeatedly infected with something that.
or some of the sedums, if they don't get divided, they start to open up in the middle too. So maybe they're just only divided too. Or
It could be, although usually when they're older and need to be divided, when they're older and the middle of the crown dies out because they're crowded and have been there a long time, you usually see that early in the year. They don't even sprout well for the middle part. But when they're just getting old and they're prone to something, they'll sprout from everywhere, but end up with that middle part being too weak to resist what they normally are able to get away from, which would be things like mildew. So I would dig them up even now. Dig them up now. They're not looking good. They're not contributing to the garden. So dig them up now and cut out the middle and put it back. Put it back in the ground with just a nice lively piece. They grow real quickly when they're a young piece. The younger they are, the smaller the division, the quicker it gets big. So I would just dig them up and not worry too much about it.
So don't have to worry about the soil or anything?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. And some of the Veronicas bloom so much earlier than others do. The ones that I like, the Veronicas Cicada and Veronica Puradalis, the ones that are the midsummer bloomers that I like so much for showing this time of year. They might get this a little bit later in the year, whereas Veronica QnA and Veronica repens and they're earlier blooming ones. So yours may be more heavily toward the earlier bloom ones, so they were already bloomed and already into their weak time of the year, which is after bloom.
Yes, they have already bloomed.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Talk to you again. Our normal super moderator is not with us today. Sonia is got her own moderation to do with 4 grandkids running around her house. There are 2. Can you take me over to chat, Steve? And to me over there. There are 2 note-taking guides. Yep. And now you have to click us back on the other screen. That you can go to.
Oh,
yeah. Okay. And we'll tell you about those again a little bit later. I just put the links to those into the chat. You may remember, if you were here last week, that Nick sent us a picture of his beech and said it leafed out and then everything died back. What happened? We suggested there might be something wrong with the roots. He says, well, I dug it up once, checked the roots, and dug it up again. But he dug it up again, and found that the roots look like this. Now, if you were here last week, you saw me hold up a hold up a little root mass that came from it was probably a
What's this
1 or 2 gallon pot.
Oh, we gotta stop. Share for a minute.
And
And spot or spot. I don't know how to do that.
we don't only need to do this for minutes. I've got a picture of it, but I held up a little root system. See this one? I'm holding it in my hand. It's just a little twig with roots on it. Go back to share.
Yeah. Sorry about that, but I thought
That's okay.
that's what we get. For the
This is what Nick found when he dug up his beech. Was that although it's 4 or 5 years in the ground at his place, and it is, you might get the idea from that last picture that it's about 6 feet tall. That's all the root that it had. And you can see by the bend in the outer roots, the pot that it was in, so the orange lines, it was in a pot that made the roots go out to here and bend down. He did find those and turn them outward. But the problem is that red line, there's the pot it was in when it was littler than that, when it was being first produced as graft. And there, those roots are wrapped around each other. You see those two right there, wrapped right around each other?
It's like a figure 8.
And there's one more in there that we said, that's the problem. Every time that root right there tries to thicken, because it's a flare root and it's going to thicken as it grows.
And it's
It's
strangled by its companion.
Yes, but every time it thickens, it's cutting off what it's wrapped around.
Mhm.
And what's wrapped around it, there's a big one coming down around it that's trying to grow too, and they're strangling each other. And so with a chisel and a little tiny saw, he was working on cutting those out and putting it back in the ground to see if it makes it. Once you get it growing, what a will to live plants have. You might be able to see the pinkish foliage in the background there.
It goes.
That's a tricolor beech that we planted not quite 10 years ago. And it's a good 25 feet tall now.
It was a 6-footer when we planted it.
Yeah, we planted at 6 feet, so 6 feet and 20 feet. Figure that it's 14, it's growing about a foot and a half a year, which is what tricolor beeches grow, about 18 inches a year. But first, you got to get the roots into good shape. You're not going to do that. Are there other questions that anybody might have? You might have to click that screen. Because Ann sent in another failure to grow issue. And this looks to me like it's an ostrich fern. Is it an ostrich fern? She says the crown is gone dry and it's only grown on the edges. What do I do? What's happened? I can't remember ever having seen an ostrich fern crown get dried up and too crowded, but something's gone out. I would dig that one up, yes, and cut off those separate, just slice through between the plant and the center, slice through and put those pieces in individually, because something did happen to that crown, whether it's got its own, I can't imagine.
What is
probably a sulfur hose.
But did it get chopped? Is it pouring water right there? Ostrich fern
Likes water.
Yeah.
Water.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you've got a question,
Bob's got a hand up.
go for it, Bob.
Hello and morning glory, everyone.
Morning.
It's about a Japanese maple I planted 15 months ago, last spring. Planted it myself, used your guides on getting the roots right and the flare done right. And now, after leafing out healthy this year, the plant seems to be in distress. A lot of dead growth on the leaf just suddenly over the last couple of weeks. And I do have the trunk protected with hardware cloth in its young life there. And so just really puzzled over what's going on with this Japanese maple. If you have any input, thank you.
We do have input, and I'm sorry to say that we can't get to it right now, but we put your pictures in as a perfect example of what puts on this time of year with dieback. And in those pictures, it'd be a little bit more apparent, I hope, that I think you need to look again at the root system, because the picture that you sent, it's not of the base of the plant. But when I enlarge your picture and look at the base of the plant, the trunk is, I don't see any sign of a flare at ground level. the trunk appears to still be going straight into the ground. So you may have been fooled by the graft union, where it swells a little bit where the plant was grafted. There may be a girdle root below the surface, but I can't show that picture right now because I don't have any quick way to get to it. Maybe I do, but I'm not quick enough to think of the good way to get to it. So, but I think take some soil away from the trunk, pull it back away, because I think that that's probably what's going on. And it's very typical this time of year that a plant that leaves out well, like the beech that you just looked at, and then gets into trouble when the summer really gets hot and long days. That's a classic issue of cambium damage or root girdling. So I would take a look.
Well, one thing with it, if it's a lace leaf, if it's a Japanese maple and it's getting the leaves are going brown.
No, it's more than that.
No,
I think we better wait and look at the
too much or
pictures.
too little water. I'm just saying there's another symptom. It can be too much. Too
Right,
little
but
water.
when we look at the picture, it's a better time to talk about that because people can't see what we're thinking
Oh,
about.
okay.
So I'm sorry, Bob, I decided to put it into the body of the talk rather than to put it into the preamble here. Sorry.
Understood. Thank you.
All right, Jean, you go ahead.
I have the back of our property is lined with lilacs that are well over 40 years old and they're at least 17 feet tall. It's in my neighbor's backyard. And I'm thinking after listening to you that it would be possible to just cut them back to like 4 feet all the way across and take out the dead, you know, the old ancient stuff and hope for new life. Is there
Yeah, definitely.
what is the best time to do it? Fall, spring, now, when?
If you're going to, so these are lilacs, right? I heard, did I?
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. And they're ancient.
Lilacs are ancient when they're 100 years old. Lilacs have been around, that can hang around for a long time. So,
Well, I think these were planted probably in the 50s.
Yep.
yeah, and that's shouldn't be a problem. As long as they're not now in deep shade. A lot of times people plant lilacs and over the years they end up in the shade of a bigger tree that grew over the top of them and they don't respond quite as well when they're in the shade. But yeah, you can cut those back, and I would do it if I want the quickest result, the least amount of time in limbo with the plant, then right before bud break. So end of March, beginning of April next year is when I would cut them back. And if you want them to be shorter right away, then yeah, cut all of the plants down to 4 feet or 6 feet, whatever you're looking at. But definitely,
I kind of want them to be shorter just because I'm seeing grapevines in there and also nightshades. So there's all kinds of vines in there. It's like, oh man, we got to clean this out. So I
You're
just,
going to
you
need
know, I don't.
Yeah, you're gonna need to do that at the same time, because if you cut these back hard, they're going to need to sprout from lower down on the trunk, just as when we cut shrubs back down to nothing. Let's not go ahead to a prettier picture. Okay, Steve.
Okay, so I'll do it early spring, like March.
Do it early spring, and at the same time, either cut back or start digging out those vines, because if they shade the base of those plants, they'll thwart them from being able to leaf out heavily. And when you cut them back to 4 or 6 feet, cut some of those trunks all the way down to the ground, because doubtless when they've been there that long, there's borer damage in the trunk. And
The bigger ones take out some of the
take
bigger
out some of the
ones.
bigger ones, because you need to have fresh growth coming right from the base, and you need canes that are small enough that borers can't get in there and degrade them further.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Barb, go.
Good morning, everyone. This is a question about a cactus. I have a friend that moved to Phoenix and planted 3 cactuses. I sent you a picture this morning, but I don't anticipate that you got a chance to see it.
I did actually see the picture, and probably just before you got here, I was saying that I didn't have time to go back and modify things to put it in, but it broke off, huh?
Well, they said they had a storm, and yes, it broke off. So the question is, should she cut it back down to the base, or should she let it callus over? And then I think little ones grow from the side, don't they?
Yeah.
Okay.
For the most part, she can just leave it and it'll renew itself. She could also take the piece that broke off and slice it into pieces and stick it into nice sandy soil and keep it in a place that's that's out of the extreme heat and sun, like a little bit shaded and sometimes get some water. And she'll probably get new cacti sprouting. It doesn't happen overnight, but they do root from cut pieces. And of course, wear heavy gloves. And then,
Yeah,
okay,
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
okay.
I'll let them know. Bye-bye.
I think we'll go ahead and get started because this is a crowd participation day and we'll be doing this throughout. We'd love to hear other voices, so we'll continue to ask you to speak and you go right ahead and do that.